Okay, we're going to close it out by reminding you that the details of the application process you'll learn in April. But as you absorb this information and go out onto our website and look for more awesome pictures and stories, how should you be organizing this information and thinking about it? So Jim Sonne is going to help you think that through.
I feel like I'm harkening back to my days in my garage band in high school. The theme that I hope to leave you with today is that no matter what clinic you choose, you're going to be developing the skills and judgment necessary to be a first-rate lawyer in service to clients in pursuit of justice. And that's really across the board. So it's not that it doesn't matter, but it really doesn't matter in the sense that you're going to be getting these lessons no matter which clinic you choose. And we really encourage you to think broadly when you're trying to decide, okay, so which clinics should I choose, which clinics should I rank? There's a ranking system that we'll talk about in April. And we would encourage you, and we'll remind you at the time, to plan to apply to at least 4 clinics. The idea not only is to guarantee a spot, and I think that generally, if you apply to 4, the chances are almost certain that you will get one, and that you also are encouraged to think broadly in that process. So despite these universal benefits, then, how do you go about choosing? And we have some suggestions. The first on this slide is to think about the client. Think about the client opportunity, the relationships, the professional judgment, the counseling. Your clients come to you because they have a problem. You are not and sometimes you might have to think in a detached way to provide them guidance, but you're not entirely detached. There's a relationship that you're building, and that relationship that you'll build with your clients is one that that you'll learn a lot from, and that will benefit you no matter the type of practice that you choose. So think about the type of client that you can work with in the particular clinics. And I should flag for you this handout here that you all should have in your place, and it's also going to be on the website, which gives you a summary of each of the clinics, as well as the type of work and clients that they represent. I think you heard a lot right now today about some examples. So think about the type of client. Is it an individual, a student, an asylum seeker, a prisoner, a day laborer, a criminal defendant? Great opportunities to develop as a lawyer in service to your clients and to justice there. Is it an organization, a startup, a human rights or environmental group, a community nonprofit, or the people? That was for you, George. So think about that. And all of those relationships, that building of professional judgment, the confidence that you get from the experience of working with real people who are in a pinch and are relying on you to help them through a very difficult part in their life. This may be you might just think of this, oh, this is my law school education. That's true, but for your clients, this is something of great importance to them, and it's really grounding in your professional development to work for real people in those situations. So second, I would argue, even beyond, so I have to almost think about clients more importantly than I would subject matter. Subject matter, of course, is the flavor, right? It's the orientation around which you are doing your work. But I would also encourage you to think more broadly about developing interests in areas that maybe you have a slight interest in and you want to develop a greater interest in. And so think about, obviously, the subject matter. And then we have here the sort of litigation, non-litigation, trial and appellate. So think about the type of work. So if you're thinking about being a litigator or going into corporate practice, think about developing those skills. But I would also keep in mind, it's something that Professor Mitchell will, I think, talk about in a moment, that litigators should know how contracts work, and business lawyers should know what happens when they don't work. Okay, so that experience, maybe try the opposite in your law school in clinic, so that you have a sense of how the other half thinks, so to speak. Then in terms of trial versus appellate, are you someone who is interested in on your feet, rapid fire advocacy, or maybe is a little nervous about that and wants to develop those skills so that you can be effective once you join your full-time practice after law school. So think about trial practice. Appellate practice, do you want to develop your skills in deliberate storytelling, in 15 rounds of edits? I just got a brief from the students this morning with, I think it was 25, draft 25. So with a policy twist, right? So the opportunity to make a difference. And then also think about the pace of the day. Think about your work life. Think about your work-life balance. Talk to your upper class friends. So the upshot is there's a lot to think about, but in the end, it's about the development of these skills, judgment, identity, confidence that you'll get from any of our clinics. And with that, I just wanted to give you to turn the floor over to Pam Karlan and Jay Mitchell, who are going to give you a few examples from their perspective about this broader way of thinking.
Yay. And we're definitely going to get you out of here in 5 minutes. Don't worry, we'll make it.
Well, listen. So we've been talking about a lot of lawyer stuff so far, but it may be the case that some of you are thinking about not practicing law when you get out, or maybe just working in a firm for a year or two before going off to do something else. Could be private equity, could be a startup, could be management consulting, could be working in a nonprofit, could be an academic career. There's all kinds of interesting things to do out in the world. And so the question then for you is like, well, why would I take a clinic? Why would I devote an entire quarter to practicing law if that's not what I'm going to do? And I think that's a pretty good question. I think that's a fair question. And my response to that is largely shaped by my own experiences in the workforce. Before coming here, about 8 or 9 years ago, I was a partner for a couple years in a law firm, but spent about 15 years working at Levi Strauss & Co. in San Francisco, serving in various legal and management roles, both in the United States and in Europe. Also did a short stint in a life sciences company down here on the peninsula. And, you know, that was great. I mean, that was roughly half my career working in a business setting. It was really interesting to work in a place where law and lawyers weren't the center of attention. You know, you're working with people from all these different disciplines, different functions, different agendas, different priorities, different countries to create products and to get them out the door. I mean, I saw a lot, and I really learned a lot from being in that business environment for such a long time. So I look at that experience, and then I look at what goes on in the clinic, and I come down this way on that question. So in the clinic, for sure, there's legal stuff, right? There is. But let's look a little bit harder at what you do, right? What you're actually doing, and things like situation assessment, practical problem solving, planning, project management, meeting leadership, writing and writing and writing, oral presentation, working at tempo, working with other people, being accountable to other people, executing very crisply in everything you do. I mean, all of those things go to your effectiveness, or I guess your capability. It really doesn't matter how much you know or how smart you are if you can't operationalize it inside of a business setting or inside of a professional setting. And they're all, at least seem to me, all of those sorts of things seem quite relevant and transferable no matter what you do in your career, starting with the 2L summer in a law firm to being a partner at Sullivan & Cromwell, or a business development person at Palantir, or a principal at Blackstone, or running Habitat for Humanity, or your own business, right? And the great thing about the clinic, and I've come to recognize and appreciate this the longer I do this, is it's such a great venue for working on those things, for improving your capability in a work environment. You know, the small class setting, all of the feedback that you get, the opportunities for reflection, self-evaluation, focused improvement, you're not going to see that again in your career. The other thing is, you know, at least in my clinic, when I look at the development goals we set out in our syllabus, they're almost 90% focused on that kind of thing, not on whether you've memorized the California Corporations Code or something like that, but really focused on those sorts of things, collaboration, execution, that kind of stuff, because that's so central to success in whatever you do. So if you're thinking about doing something else when you get out of school, I mean, that's great. But I'd encourage you to think hard about the clinic as preparation for that career, because I think it can really serve you well no matter what you end up doing in your career. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Karlan, and I'm co-director of the Supreme Court Litigation Clinic. I did a clinic 36 years ago, and I'm still in touch with the professor who was my clinical supervisor, because I think the relationship you build with the people you work with in the clinic will last you a lifetime. Another relationship that many of you will want to build that will last you a lifetime is a relationship with a judge for whom you clerk. And so I wanted to say a little bit about the relationship between the clinics and clerking and how helpful it is. Because when you apply for clerkships, judges are going to want to know 5 things about you, only one of which is really going to be reflected by your transcript. And that's, do you know a lot of law? Judges want to know that, and you can show judges that by what you do in the classes you take in rooms that look like this. But the other things judges want to know about you are harder to show through just the classroom environment. So one of the other things judges want to know is, how well do you write? And every one of the clinics is going to give you a better writing sample than having to show a judge who's already read about Norman Nolan 500 times why there should be class certification. And it doesn't matter which clinic you do, all of the clinics, you'll produce a writing sample that'll be really good and really useful. Another thing a judge wants to know is, the third thing a judge wants to know is, what are your work habits like? Are you somebody who procrastinates, or do you execute crisply, as Jay said? And that's something that your clinical supervisors are going to be able to talk about in their letters of recommendation for you. The next thing judges are going to want to know is just, what are you like to work with? Are they going to enjoy having you around? And again, clinical faculty are probably the most influential recommendation writers on things like this, because they will have worked with you and they can say, what are you like to work with in a small environment? And the last thing judges want to know is about your judgment. And that's something that, again, clinics are both going to train you in a way that gives you good judgment, and will have somebody who has an opportunity to talk about your judgment. And that means it doesn't matter which clinic you do, because even if you're doing a clinic that never goes into court, like, for example, Jay's clinic, he can talk about judgment. Even if you're thinking you want to clerk on an appellate court, somebody who can talk about your proceeding, your writing in an administrative proceeding is going to be helpful. And so there's no correlation between which clinic you do and which courts you clerk on, but there's a really high correlation between doing a clinic and getting a good clerkship. And the last thing I'll just say about this in terms of tactics is, think really hard about applying to do a clinic in your second year of law school, both because that gives you that recommendation earlier on, and because a lot of students tell us that one of the most valuable things that happens after their clerkship is going back into the classroom with a lot of experience behind them that gives them just a much richer sense of what's going on when they're reading the cases, now that they know what's behind them.
Thank you.